Hello, in this video I'm going to set up rate limiting and bot detection on a Next.js application in under 10 minutes. So the first step is to create a new app. I'm going to use the create next app CLI and we're just going to call this my app 1. We're going to accept all of the defaults here and let it set up the new application locally. Once it installs the dependencies, we'll be ready to get going. Okay, now we have the dependencies installed, we'll go into the directory and then start the dev server just to make sure everything is running. Load up here, and we see we have the standard Next.js splash screen. Let's also get the code up into our code editor, and then we're going to load the Arcjet app. Here I'm already logged in, and we're going to create a new site. Now if you're just trying things out, you can go to the Arcjet live example where you can play around with features like sign-up form protection, attack protection. You can play around with what we're going to get set up now as well. You can also deploy a app to your Vercel account. You can view the code on GitHub and get going right away. But in this case, we're going to start with a new application. And then we're going to go over to the Arcjet documentation and install the SDK. So let's close down the server and then install the Arcjet Next package. Whilst that's installing, we'll copy over the key that we need to a local environment file. We'll copy this and then create a new .env.local, which is in the gitignore file, so that it won't be committed into Git. That's the key setup. Go back to the docs, and then we're just going to copy this API route over. We're going to create a new folder called API, which you can call whatever you like. We can call this subdirectory Arcjet, and then we're going to create a new API route here. Now what we've got here is a standard Next.js API route that will respond to GET requests. We're going to key off the user ID, and we've created a token bucket rate limit. This bucket will refill by 5 tokens every 10 seconds to a maximum capacity of 10. And then when we make a request, we're going to deduct 5 tokens from that bucket. That means after 2 requests, the bucket will be 0, and the subsequent third request will be denied as too many requests. So let's go back to the terminal here. Let's launch the dev server again. We'll go back to our Next.js app here, and we'll go to API Arcjet. Now we're under the rate limit, so we've got hello world. We'll make another request. We have here 0 requests remaining, and then when we refresh, we'll see that we have too many requests. And we can see we have 0 requests remaining and when that window is going to reset. All this information is just being output, and it's available in the code here. Now you can see that the decision is denied, and so this is the response that we're returning. That's fine as it is, but we also want to add in a bot detection rule. So let's go back to the Arcjet documentation and go to the Next.js quick start, and we'll skip down to step 3 where we're going to copy over the detect bot rule. The key with Arcjet is that rules are defined locally within your code, and you can chain multiple rules together. So here we have both bot detection and the token bucket rate limit configured. There are different types of automated clients that you can configure. We're going for the most conservative here and blocking all automated clients. But there are different thresholds that you can set. And if you go into the bot types section of the docs, then you can find out what those all mean. Let's save this and go back to the server and then make another request. We can see here in the Arcjet dashboard that these requests are showing up and you can view information about them. But we'll go back and make a request here. Now, the details that we've got in our code are showing the different rules that have been executed. So the first one of these is Arcjet Shield. Now, this runs in the background and allows us to detect things like SQL injection or other types of attack against our application. We also have our rate limit rule. The conclusion was allow. And then we have the bot detection rule. Again, the conclusion was allow. We've got some information about the IP address, but because we're running locally, we don't have any of these metadata fields. These would be available if you were deployed to production and real IP addresses were hitting that API route. Now, the conclusion of those rules was to allow, and the bot detection reason was it was likely not a bot. However, if we then make a request using curl, then we can see that we've actually got an error. The request has been blocked because we detected this as an automated client because of a user agent match. And if we go back to the server console, we can see here that the conclusion was deny with an Arcjet bot reason as an automated client. Now you can configure this to remove curl as an automated client. It just depends on what the API route is doing. So for instance, you might want to allow curl requests to an actual API, but you might not want to allow them to a sign-up form endpoint. All this can be configured in the rules that are in your code. Now you'll also have noticed that the response here was too many requests. That's correct if we'd hit the rate limit, but it's not really what we want if this is a bot response. And it's because we copied over the quick start, and all we're doing is returning this static hard-coded response depending on whether the request is denied or not. Now, one of the great things about Arcjet is you get access to all of the signals that we have to make up the decision back into the code, so you can change the logic of your application depending on the response. So here, for instance, we can use the decision reason so that if it's a rate limit, then we'll apply this rule. But if the decision is a bot, then we send a 403 instead. Let's save that, make sure the server is running, and then if we make another request, we'll see that the response is different. Bot detected. We've got a different response here, too many requests, which is exactly what we want. Now the idea with Arcjet is that the rules are defined by developers in the code because developers know what the expected requests are for each of the API routes. And then you get the decision metadata back with all the signals that Arcjet has used to make that decision. So you can change the logic, you can include information about the client. Here we're keyed off a hard-coded user ID, but you could bring in information about the pricing plan that they're on, you can use their IP address, and then when we send back that decision, you can decide to take different actions as a result. For anonymous users, for instance, you could have a much lower rate limit compared to users who are logged in, or based on their pricing plan, to give different quotas. The idea here is that the context is really important, and Arcjet allows you to build this functionality in from the beginning. Well, that's how to configure a simple rate limit and bot detection on Next.js in just a few minutes.